Hello, this is Ian Stewart, and welcome to the People of Earth podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the People of Earth podcast, where we interview some of the top performers in the New York City world music scene. Today's guest is none other than drummer, percussionist, bandleader, and educator Bobby Sanabria. For most of you listening, Bobby Sanabria probably doesn't need any introduction whatsoever, but by any chance, if you don't know who he is, Bobby is a Grammy-nominated bandleader. He leads the Bobby Sanabria Multiverse Big Band, as well as a few other groups under his own name. And he also holds positions at Manhattan School of Music and the New School, respectively. He's also probably played with just about everybody imaginable in the jazz and Latin jazz scene here in New York. I mean, his recording and performing credits range from Dizzy Gillespie, Mongo Santamaria, to even avant-garde artists such as Roswell Rudd. Along with recording, teaching, and performing, he's also extremely active in his local community in the Bronx and is the artistic director and curator at the Bronx Heritage Music Center. In this interview, we talk about, of course, Bobby's upbringing, his early career, how he got to the point that he is now. But more importantly, we talk about kind of New York itself and how the music scene, or at least his part of the music scene, has changed and evolved over time. One of the things that really impressed me about this interview is really just how good Bobby is at being interviewed. He's crystal clear in every word that he says. There's not a pause or hardly like an or a but that's ever really said. I was really blown away by that. You can tell he's been interviewed many times and is very good at it. Before we get into the interview, I want to announce that Bobby does have a new recording coming out, I believe later this year, and it's actually the music of West Side Story rearranged in a Latin format. It's called West Side Story Reimagined. It was recorded by the Multiverse Big Band. I believe it was recorded live at Dizzy's Club Coca-Cola in Lincoln Center this past November. So obviously keep an eye out for that album. You could go to Bobby's website at bobbysanabria.com for more information on that, I'm sure. And of course, a week from tomorrow, on February 6th, at Brooklyn Bowl, People of Earth will be performing. The show is at 8 p.m. Doors open at 6 p.m. The cover is $10, so you got no excuse. So yeah, hope to see all of you that are listening, that are in the New York area there next Tuesday. Put it on your calendar. All right, all announcements aside, sit back, relax, and enjoy Bobby Sanabria. All right, Bobby, thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, it's a privilege. Thank you.
Yeah. So I've been wanting to interview you specifically because in relevance to this podcast, kind of your life and your career, both as a performer, band leader, and educator, is kind of giving you I guess from what I can see, kind of a front row seat to the kind of world music scene in New York City as a whole. I mean, you've gone through the the sideman career like a lot of like a lot of us, and but you've also led your own groups for many years now, and have also had an interesting position as an educator in at least two of the more prestigious institutions here in New York City. So you've actually had a chance to kind of see the new generation come in again and again. So I would really like to pick your brain a little bit about kind of your objective observations of, where you've kind of seen this whole community going, and, the changes that you've noticed, and, your opinions on where it may be going.
Well, the ironic thing that I've seen over the years is that when I was, I have, for those of you who are listening, I'm kind of in a unique position because I'm a native New Yorker. I was born and raised in the South Bronx,
Mm-hmm.
in the Fort Apache area. My parents are from Puerto Rico. My father Jose is from Guanica, and my mother is from Jabucoa, two very famous sugarcane cutting cities on the island. They met here in the 50s and married and had myself and my sister Joanne, my younger sister. And they originally lived on Fox Street and then Beck Street in the Fort Apache area. And then finally we moved to the projects to East 153rd Street, first to 281 Cortlandt Avenue in the Melrose Projects, then to 681 Cortlandt Avenue. So all my formative years up until I got to college were my ethos was formed by my upbringing here in New York City and uh, being a New Yorican,
Mm-hmm.
son of Puerto Rican parents. So that means I grew up with Cuban music in the home. But my father had very eclectic tastes. He rest in peace. He listened to Brazilian music, Trinidadian music, big band music, Count Basie, Ellington, all that kind of stuff. And of course, Machito Puente, Tito Rodriguez, the Jibaro music traditions of Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
We also listened to music from Spain, like people like Lola Flores, who sang rumba flamenca.
Right.
Mexican, excuse me, Mexican music,
Yeah.
etc. Um, he was very cosmopolitan, as were most Puerto Ricans that lived in the city at that time,
Mm-hmm.
because most Puerto Ricans went to see Spanish language movies, and those movies were made in Mexico,
Mm.
and they featured Cuban artists and great comedians and actors, etc., etc. And then the great ballroom scene that existed in New York at the time, and nightclub scene.
Oh, okay.
So it was not a big thing for my parents to get dressed up on a Friday night or Saturday night and go out dancing. That is gone. I mean, when I was coming up on the scene, when I was 17, 18, I graduated high school and I went to the Berklee College of Music, auditioned.
Mm.
And when I was there, I was the only Puerto Rican there. There were
Yeah.
a couple of Brazilians, one Argentinian, one Costa Rican. I swear, it was a barren wasteland. All anybody knew about Latin music up there was Santana.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit about Brazilian music because uh, Wayne Shorter had done that Native Dancer album with
Yeah.
Milton Nascimento,
Right.
and they were more anybody that was into anything Latin or remotely Latin was into Brazilian music
Right. Yeah.
because of the tradition of the bossa nova being absorbed by the jazz community. You opened up a real book and there were bossa novas in there.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know the difference between a mambo and a bayong. It was just like that. It was a barren
Yes.
wasteland. That was the beginning of my life as an educator because my initial roommates, my first semester started looking at my records and they go, well, who are these people? Típica 73, Machito.
Right.
And I thought everybody knew who these people were. Eddie Palmieri.
Oh, okay.
Who's this Italian guy, Eddie Palmieri?
So,
I mean, they literally said things like that. So I had to literally put the records on and show them and hip them to the. I mean, I remember when my roommate Scott Cohen, he's listening. He goes, "How come it has violins in it?" Or goes, "Oh, you never heard charanga music before, the flute and
Right.
violin tradition of Cuba." I realized that I had grown up in a bubble in New York City.
Yeah.
And New York City was at the same time that bubble was a special place.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the beginning of me becoming an educator because I was just sharing, and then people started knocking on my dorm room door and said, "Hey, are you the guy with the Latin records?"
Wow.
So it was amazing. I mean, the teachers, nobody knew anything in the percussion department
So
about
you,
this music.
so you saw that void pretty early. That.
Oh, forget it. I mean,
Yeah.
I also it was also disheartening too because it meant that we were invisible in this country,
Mhm. Okay.
other than in New York. And quite possibly other cosmopolitan cities where Puerto Ricans were
Sure.
living, like Chicago,
Right.
of Los Angeles, San Francisco, and obviously Miami has a big Cuban community.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, that's it. And of course, that worked to my advantage because I was the only one in the school that knew how to play congas, bongo, timbales,
Mm-hmm.
some Brazilian percussion. So in my freshman year, I was in the best ensemble, the most highly rated and coveted ensemble at the school, the Michael Gibbs Chrome Waterfall Orchestra. He was the composer, artist in residence at the school.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, he worked a lot with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, John McLaughlin,
Oh, okay.
writing some of the arrangements that they recorded with the London Philharmonic or the London Symphony. And he was, he was very much an avant-gardist. He was an extension of Don Ellis. He would write, and I was hip to Don Ellis already because I had been hip to Don Ellis from watching PBS when I was a kid. That was the great thing. You could learn so much from TV back then. So when he would have music, sometimes it would just be bars. There's a bar 5, there's a bar 9, there's a bar 11. He goes, "Can you come up with a groove for that?" He'd have the bass line written out, but he wanted you to create something. So instead of writing specific patterns like somebody else would do, and it was great. I mean, Kermit Driscoll was the bass player.
Oh, really? He was my one of my private teachers
Wow.
at Purchase for a year.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I've lost track. I mean,
Yeah.
every once in a while I get a message from him on Facebook, but Bill Frisell was the guitar player.
Okay.
Bill Frisell took the place of another guy. I remember the first week there was a guy with a big head of hair, kind of like one of those plaid lumberjack shirts, beautiful hollow body guitar, and he didn't say anything, just played. He played beautifully. Second week he was there. Third week he wasn't there. Bill came. Then the fourth week Bill came again. By the third week, by the fifth week, I asked, "Hey, whatever happened to that guy with the lumberjack shirt and the big hair?" I asked Kermit, and Kermit goes, "Oh, that guy? That's Pat Metheny, man. He's on tour. He's on tour. He got signed to ECM, you know." I go, "Oh my God."
Frizzell has enjoyed an enviable career himself.
Right.
too,
But I remember those guys were fascinated because they had never worked with a conga player or a hand percussionist before, and all the patterns and things, simple things that we take for granted in Afro-Cuban music. They just were like amazed. I mean, and I was like in my head cracking up because I go, "Man, these guys, in one sense, they're very advanced as musicians, but in another sense, they're very ignorant."
Right.
So I was kind of like, in my own way, I was kind of an avatar of social and musical change there at the school. I remember the head of the percussion department, Gary Chafee. He was from Chicago. He said, "Hey, bring me some of the albums that everybody's talking to me about that you got and this stuff." So I bought him some Charlie. I bought him Either You Have It or You Don't by Charlie Palmieri. Joe Batan's Right, and I explained to him, "Look, this is R&B mixed with Cuban rhythms."
Right, Joe Batan, of course.
Yeah, and then what else did I bring him? Tito Puente. I think I bought him Cuba y Puerto Rico song by Tito Puente. A few other things.
What year was this?
This is 75.
Okay.
I was a freshman.
All right. Okay.
And the next week comes, the week later, I come to pick him up. He goes, "Yeah, man, this is some heavy stuff. You know, like I dug it. I don't understand it, but you know, it's just amazing the ignorance that's out there about our culture. It's a little bit better now, but it's still not on the level it should be, especially the impact that we've made as Latinos here in the United States."
Right.
But getting back to answer your initial question, the changes that have happened. The changes that have happened are that when I graduated and during the time period that I was in school for the 4 years, I would go back every weekend in my freshman year with my roommate. One of my roommates, David Carmona, who was Costa Rican, the one Costa Rican guy. He played trumpet in the high school big band. I'm sorry, in the high school concert band that I was in, and he was the one that hit me to Berkeley. I walked in one day early to practice some snare drum, and he was sitting there with his trumpet warming up, and then he's looking at this catalog that said Berkeley College of Music. I go, "What's that?" He goes, "Oh, this is the school Quincy Jones went to, man, and all these other people, and Chick Corea and all." I go, "Really?" And let me look at that. So when I looked in the catalog, there was a picture of a rehearsal, and there was a conga player in the picture. Couldn't see his face because his back was toward the camera. And I go, "Oh man, he goes, "Do you think they have any Latin jazz there?" I go, "They must." You know? And obviously we realized there wasn't any. Anyway, later on I found out, you know who that was? That was Don Elias.
Oh really?
Rehearsing with Chick Corea and Dick Mesa and all those guys.
Yeah.
Because they were
visiting artists.
No, they were. Don was studying to be either a biologist or a chemist or something like that.
Oh, okay.
At one of the colleges, I think it was Boston University or one of the other colleges that offered courses like that. and he was just part of the scene up there.
Right.
And I don't know what Dick was doing up there, but anyway, to make a long story short, I made a big impact at the school. By the time I graduated, everybody knew who I was in Boston because I had formed Ascension in its early primordial stages. We were gigging all around the city. We had done radio shows, spots, etc. We were the Latin jazz group in Boston, and there were others. There was a band called Elegua that was formed by this Dominican trumpet player named, I believe his name was Radames, and they had multiple horns. Very good group. But all the bands at Berkeley, all the bands in Boston always had Berkeley students in them, or students from New England Conservatory, because of the scene. Just like here in New York City, when you do a gig, you're gonna probably be on the stage with somebody from Manhattan School of Music or New School,
Right.
or NYU, or Juilliard,
Mm-hmm.
or somebody graduated there, or they're going there at the present time, etc.
Right.
So, and we played at all these clubs: Pooh's Pub, Riles, 1369, Inman Square Men's Bar, all these clubs that were up in Boston at the time, where you could go in, give them a demo tape, and if they liked you, they would book you. And it was great because that's, in the beginning, I never would talk to the audience. There was a guy, Scott Grimaldi, in the band. I said, you talk to the audience. It was just it was a rhythm section with one horn. And Scott played tenor, soprano, and flute. And I heard him talk, and it was like the worst. It was like, hi, everyone. Well, we formed this band, and Bobby's the leader. And it was like, after he talked, don't talk anymore. I'll talk, you know. So I had to, in the true spirit of jazz improv, I had to come up with things to say. And,
yeah.
And I have a sense of humor and everything, so that started creeping in.
Yeah.
But my
you definitely got that down to a science now.
Yeah. But my desire to inform the public about what we were doing,
right,
was a big impetus with that, because nobody knew that what we were playing was a baong from Brazil, or a maracatu, or nobody knew what we were playing was a guaguancó or a cha-cha-cha from Cuba, or that we were mixing funk with cumbia. You know, nobody knew any of that. They just reacted to the music viscerally. But then people started coming up to me saying, hey, thanks for telling me about that. I didn't know that any of that, man. Wow, that's really cool. I thought it was just all, salsa or Latin. And if they use the word salsa at all. So what has changed is that there are less opportunities to perform. When I was, during the time period that I was at the school, and I would come back on the weekends, and then when I graduated and came back, and I would come back in the summers too, etc. There was so much work that you could not, even if you were a mediocre musician, you would find a gig. It could be with some local cumbia band in Queens, playing a church dance. You could be playing at the Corso, which was the top salsa nightclub at the time. You could be playing in Brooklyn, Casa Borinquen. You could be playing, there were about between, I would say, 25 to 30 nightclubs in New York City that catered to Afro-Cuban based dance music, what today we call salsa.
Right.
And you could experience it in all its forms, from a conjunto style group, 2 trumpets in a rhythm section, conga bongo, charanga, flute and violins.
Yeah. Big
band, Puente Machito's band were working. Tito Rodriguez had passed away, I believe, in 73, 74. But all of that was happening. And sometimes people would go from one set of one club to another club to check out a different band. So they find out that they're watching Larry Harlow playing at the Corso, but then they find, oh, Tito Puente's at the Cork and Bottle. Let's go there. He's going on at midnight, and they'd go over there. And it was cheap enough that you could do that, because the clubs were making so much money off the liquor.
Right.
So imagine that time period. You could work 7 nights a week, 3 gigs a night. It was brutal. And unfortunately, that coincided with the influx of cocaine coming into the city.
Yeah.
So a lot of the musicians became cokeheads.
Yeah.
At first, as a you know social thing, but then they had to do it just to stay up.
Yeah.
I mean, not only in the land scene at the time, the jazz scene, the
Right.
studio scene. I
They
was
they talked about that in the Chicago salsa scene. It was very similar.
I could imagine. I
Yeah,
could
yeah.
imagine. Yeah, any place where there is entertainment and there's money to be made, organized crime is going to get involved, no matter
Sure,
what,
sure.
because there's so much money to be made off the admission, the liquor, just the coat check alone, um, and then just distributing drugs, and the drugs were always distributed first to the musicians,
Hmm.
and then the musicians through the musicians you would get it to the general public.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
always.
That's interesting.
That's my my experience.
Okay.
Why? Because the drug dealers would they like the musicians. Hey man, man, great thing about it. So here, take a hit. And then they go, hey, wow. And then somebody go, what was that? And he goes, oh man, the guy got a great blow. And so, oh man, give me his number. That kind of thing.
Right.
So it became decadent.
Yeah.
It became very decadent to the point that you go into a bathroom, somebody might be in one stall having sex with a woman, and then on the on the sink, people are doing three people are doing lines of blow, things like that.
Hmm.
It just I don't know what to say because in some sense, in some ways, one would say, "Wow, I wish those days were back," because the musicians were firing on all cylinders. And when you have that kind of scene happening, it breeds competition, and competition breeds what? Excellence.
Absolutely.
And the bands were excellent. I mean, so because the bands were working every night, they got tight, super tight.
Yeah.
Even if somebody would write a chart, by the end of the week, it would be so tight because you had played it already 9 times,
Absolutely.
before Friday night. So the percussion sections in those days were very noted in all the bands, and most of the people in the audience knew the names of the musicians. Um, and you'd go. I mean, me as a sideman, we would be playing opposite different groups, and we'd be watching, just like in the jazz world. People go to check out different cats, like, oh man, Sonny Rollins is playing tonight. Max Roach is playing tonight. Well, and then there's a whole row of drummers watching Max Roach. Same thing in the salsa scene.
Yeah.
And we would learn, and we would cop licks, and you go, oh man, did you hear that break they did? That Sierra they did? Oh sheesh. That lick that Oretta Viralto did on the timbales with Barreto. Oh, man, did you hear Barreto? Oh God, it was an amazing, amazing time period. And if nobody believes me, just listen to the recordings made during that time period. It'll never be the same. It'll never ever be the same, unfortunately. But be that as it may, what replaced that? Oh, and something else that most people don't know: the beginning of the end of that, in full force, was the people that owned these clubs or ran these clubs. They had leases, and the leases would run out, and then what happened was real estate went skyrocket in Manhattan, and landlords said, "Okay, you want to renew the lease for this club? I'm going to double your rent."
Yeah.
Or whatever, and people couldn't afford it, or many people got arrested, like Tony Ramone of the Corso. He got arrested for selling heroin. He's serving life. I don't even know if he's still alive.
Yeah.
But they closed that down. Once you have these places start to close, the ambiente, the scene starts leaving. Yeah. And the coup de grace was, well, two things happened. 1977, the blackout in New York City, which destroyed the Bronx and a lot of Brooklyn, and some of Manhattan. That was the beginning. Then finally, in 1990, what happens? A Honduran social club in the South Bronx called Happy Land. It was the second floor of a building, and it was like a discotheque. There was a DJ. They didn't have bands. It was a DJ. It was illegal. They had no liquor license. They had no licensing. And what happened was Marielito, a Cuban Marielito from the boat lift, had an argument with his girlfriend. He, she went to the club. He knew she was there, but she had left. But he didn't know that. He filled up a canister with gasoline, went to the club. There was only one entrance and exit. And he threw gasoline on the steps, lit it, and I think 89 people died.
Jesus.
And they lined them up all on the street. And there's a big monument there for them too, with all the names of the people that died. That destroyed the Garifuna community, Honduran community in New York.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But when that happened, the next day, the mayor, who I believe was Dinkins, closed every club that had no liquor license, or no licensing, no nothing. And a lot of those clubs employed Latin musicians.
I see.
And that was the beginning of the end. And then Jerry Masucci from Fania Records retired.
Yeah.
To raise horses in Argentina. He just got tired of everything, the scene. And the musicians complaining and this, that, and the other. And he just retired. He had made millions. He was making millions off royalties and royalties that he hadn't paid the musicians. But he was the driving force, because just like Berry Gordy got African American R&B soul music onto the mainstream America, Jerry was doing that too. I mean, because the Fania All-Stars, after the ubiquitous August 24th concert in 1973 in Yankee Stadium, all of a sudden people started taking notice. Magazines like Rolling Stone, Crawdaddy, all these rock magazines. What is this? And of course, at the same time, what's happening? Santana.
Right.
So all that was coming to full fruition. And so all that was colliding and making this, what do you call it? All the synergy was happening around the music and culture. So if you would have asked me at that time, hey, Bobby, what do you think was going to happen with what we call salsa?
Yeah.
I said, oh man, it's going to be the mainstream music of America. Any band from that time period, in the pop music world, in the rock music world, and especially disco, what did they have? A percussionist, whether they knew how to play the instruments or not.
Right, they did, right.
Yeah.
All the R&B bands. And
yeah, they all had a conga player, cowbells, everything. Of course, that made Martin Cohen very happy. Latin percussion.
I'm sure.
And rightfully so, because he believed in the music and the instruments and the culture. And I mean, before, when you would walk into a music store, you could barely get like a cowbell or a set of maracas. Now, man, you had displays, congas, timbales, bongo, and all that. I mean, but you have to give credit where credit's due. Santana. That was the turning point. That was the Rubicon. When they played at Woodstock, and people saw that film and those guys playing the instruments the way they did in that context,
right?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And as a kid, that's what got me back into the culture and the music, because by that time I was into funk,
right,
soul. I was into Puente and all that stuff, but when Santana came on the scene, I really got excited. Well, actually, the beginning was Latin Boogaloo. When I was a kid, Latin Boogaloo really excited me, as it did all New Yorkers at the time of my age. I mean, the first album I bought was Riot by Joe Bataan with my own money. My own money, I saved like $3 or so, $2.98 or whatever. Yeah. I bought that album. So I always tell Joe that he gets a kick out of it.
Yeah, he's still playing.
Yeah. So we did a panel discussion the other night, because there's a great film called We Like It Like That, that my lady Elena Martinez was the producer on. So if anybody wants to check out what that music is about, which was a combination of R&B, basically some Montuno Guajira with R&B, check out that film. We Like It Like That, the story of Latin Boogaloo. So, but from that incredible scene where there were so many nightclubs, there were about 100 bands, 200 places to play within the tri-state area. So looking back at it, when I was at Berkeley, I could see how I was in a bubble. Yeah. Not that there wasn't a Latin scene in Boston. There was a Puerto Rican community, a small community in what's known as Villa Victoria. And there was salsa happening there with DJs, also drug dealers opening up small places, clubs, etc. And and local groups, playing, but not like New York. And some occasionally, some promoter would bring a group from New York City to Boston at that time. When I was in '77, I remember Tito Puente came with his orchestra. Machito came with his orchestra. They had Willie Bobo and Sonny Stitt as the guest soloists. Norman Granz had produced it. He had rented Symphony Hall in Boston. I was in the dorms, and I'm telling my friends in the dorms, my dorm, hey man, you want to come with me to see Tito Puente and Machito on Friday at Symphony Hall? They're going, or Saturday, I think it was. They go to me. One goes, Tito Puente, he's a singer, right? It was hilarious, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking back at it, you have to laugh, man. Now Berkeley, you can major in Latin percussion there
and anything.
Yeah. But the beginning of that was me. I know it was me because there was nothing. There was nothing. And you could ask Jose Maso, who's been a radio announcer there ever since I was there. You could ask him. In fact, he'll tell you the night he met me. I was at the Harbor House in some suburb of Massachusetts. It took me I had to take the trolley, the T. I had to take the 2 buses, whatever. I don't know. It took me 2 hours to get there, but I got there by myself to see Tito Puente, and I had the gumption to go up to him and ask him, Maestro, can I sit in? He goes, what do you play? He goes, Timbales. He goes, Timbales. He goes to the band, hey, guess what, guys? Guess what this guy plays? Timbales. All right, come up. So we started trade. They played a Montuno, and we started trading. And the audience went nuts. And this guy, Jose Maso, comes up to me, and he was from WBUR in Boston, Boston University. He's got that Choco con salsa, and we became friends. And he became a champion of me and Tito. That's how me and Tito became friends. And then when I went to see him at Symphony Hall, I was able to go backstage and say hello to him and everything. And that was interesting because he had wanted Machito to open up for him. And Machito got pissed off. And Machito started cursing him out in Spanish. ¿Quién carajo tú te crees que tú eres, coño? Tú aprendiste a tocar esta música con nosotros. Who the fuck do you think you are, man? You learned how to play this music when you were a little kid in this band. And you want me to open up for you? And Tito was holding a glass of cognac, I remember, and he was shivering like a little kid. I always remember that. Willie Bobo was high. Sonny Stitt was high. Norman Granz was pissed off because they were high. Machito was pissed off because they were high. He started yelling at Sonny Stitt like he was a little kid. Don't you learn anything? Don't you remember what happened to Charlie Parker? I can't believe it. Right. It was hilarious. It was like a Fellini movie, man. And I was in the thick of it. Yeah. But Tito went out there and he kicked ass. The sound system was atrocious. I was sitting. I stood on the side in the rafters because I knew Tito and I could do that. And my then roommate Ronnie Siago, he was the only guy that came with me because Ronnie played drums. He's a great rock drummer and he's been based in LA for years. He plays with Gino Vanelli and all these people.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But anyway, Ronnie came with me because his father had subbed on tenor saxophone in Tito Puente's band, and Ronnie grew up in Long Island.
Oh, okay.
So he knew a little bit.
Yeah.
So he goes, hey, man, I'll go with you, man.
Yeah.
So we were hanging out, and it was like, but Tito kicked ass. Machito had an album called Fireworks that was out. And he had a hit song from that called Salsa Somos Salsero. Well, how did it go? Salsa Somos Salsero, somos conocidos en el mundo entero. It was a son montuno. And it became a hit. But that was the first tune he played. But he counted it too slow. And it was like this, salsa somos salsa. And that killed the audience, man.
Oh, okay.
He couldn't recover. So Tito kicked ass. He kicked Willie Bobo's ass. And then both bands played at the end. Both bands played at the end. The song called Macho. That's on the album. And that album is important because Lalo Rodriguez is on that album. He had done the Eddie Palmieri recording, Son of Latin Music, but he was the guest vocalist on this Machito album, Fireworks. So all these memories are coming back. But to get back again, to finally answering your question, the difference is that there was an incredible, vital club scene going on at the time.
Sure.
In the Latin scene, and the jazz scene, the pop scene, the rock scene, everything. CBGBs, McKell's, CBGBs on the rock scene, McKell's on the jazz. That's where Michel Camilo, all these guys came up.
Yeah.
At that time. Michel was playing in a band called French Toast with Peter Gordon. He was a French horn player.
Really?
Yeah. We had all these great bands. There was with hip names.
Yeah.
The Microscopic Septet, which still exists today.
Yeah, I know.
Michael Hashim,
right?
The alto player runs it. Sex Mob.
Yeah.
By Steve Bernstein.
Yeah.
Who the hell has a name? What jazz band has a name called Sex Mob?
That band is great live.
Yeah.
They played at SUNY Purchase when I was like a sophomore or something. They kicked serious ass.
The Lounge Lizards.
Right.
You know, all these great bands, and I was in the thick of that.
Yeah.
And the first gig we did when I reformed Ascension in New York was Ali's Alley, Rashid Ali's place. Ali's Alley. And I went up there, same thing. I had a little, in those days, you knocked on doors, you had like a manila envelope with a press kit with bios and all that stuff, a cassette, gave it to them, and they listened and they called you back, or you called them, and they said, yeah, we got a date for you, this, that.
Yeah.
So I went to Ali's Alley. I remember it was a loft because people were getting these lofts. People don't realize, the people that are listening, at that time New York was bankrupt, was coming out of its bankruptcy, and a lot of factories, companies had left Manhattan, and they had these lofts, these huge lofts that were open. Right. So the landlords had no tenants, so they would rent to anybody that would come along and say, I'll rent it. And some of these places some of them had no heating, some of them had no plumbing, so people started fixing them up. Then they'd get finally heating, they'd get water, etc. And then if they were artistically inclined, they'd form a club. That's how the Knitting Factory started.
Right.
Ali's Alley and all these other Jazz Mania, Jazz Forum. There was a bunch of them.
Yeah. And
they provided work. And you could see somebody like Big Nick Nicholas, who had taken the tenor solo on the original version of Manteca with Dizzy Gillespie's big band. You could see them at one of these lofts playing. Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. Yeah. So there was the Universal Jazz Coalition, Kobe Narita. She rented a loft out and had concerts there and all. It was a great scene. I remember Ali's Alley. I said, "Don't you got any chairs?" And Rashid Ali goes to me, "No, man. People sit on these pillows, man, Indian style. And if they don't like it, they're going to have to stand up."
That's funny.
So
I like that.
A lot of these gigs were door gigs.
Yeah. But
if you played your cards right, you'd make a lot of bread. And then somebody would see you and say, "Hey, I run Lincoln Center out of doors. Right. Can you play at Summer Stage or something?" And that was the beginning of me really becoming a band leader in earnest. I've always been a sideman and a band leader at the same time. I'm kind of unique in that sense. Okay. Because when I would have periods of, like for example, as soon as I got to college, I had to get with Mongo Santa Maria, which was great. I'm traveling, but we'd be traveling for 4 weeks. Yep. Sometimes 8 weeks. But then all of a sudden, nothing for a month. Yep. So what am I going to do? Sometimes people would like not hire you because they say, "Oh, I know you're going to go on the road again in a month because we can't have you steady in this band." So you'd freelance, doing weddings, bar mitzvahs, whatever. But if nothing came along, and all of a sudden, call up a place like Mondo Perso, "Hey, you got? I'm in town. Can you give me a Monday night?" I said, "Sure." So you're doing gigs. Yeah. As a leader still. Yeah. Mongo hated that because he didn't want any competition at all. Huh. He hated that.
But you did it anyway.
But yeah, we had to. I had to just to stay alive and keep my name out there and everything. And of course, anybody that forms a group has some type of musical vision, whether it's highly developed or not. You know, you've worked for guys that are band leaders that you start going, how did this guy become a band leader, or why is this person band? They're not qualified to do it, but for some reason they have a vision of they want to do something.
Sure. Yeah.
So, you know, in my case, I had a vision, but I wanted to have a group that could play any of the things that had influenced me.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was Santana, whether it was Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, whether it was John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra, whether it was Irakere, all that kind of stuff. So it's always been a conundrum for me to find players that are that versatile. And it was hard in the beginning because I obviously needed jazz-oriented players that knew harmonically how the solo one changes and had that kind of harmonic sophistication. But I needed players that at the very least, had some experience in the salsa scene. The South American rhythmic vocabulary like cumbia, samba, bayon, all that maracatu, I could teach them that, and you know they could develop. But if they were a jazz player, like a bass player, and they had no knowledge of what a tumbao was, and they had just played Brazilian music on a superficial level, from real book tunes.
Exactly.
It was very hard. Very hard. Very hard. Now there's guys like yourself, and over the years.
Yeah, but I was one of those guys. For definitely, you know, I remember Ray Vega like verbally berating me in school when I was in his big band. You know, just because if you don't have if you don't have a reference point, the learning curve is extremely steep.
Right, and but you also have to have the desire. Some people that I've had students, I give them all the information and they just don't get it. Like we say in Spanish, no le entra. It doesn't go in. You have to want to do it.
Yeah.
Like I remember sometimes playing like something. Let's say I played something. Let's say like a real typical group like Cortijo y su combo from Puerto Rico, and from the jazz perspective, the jazz musicians just listening for the harmony.
Right.
And when they get to the montuno, which just is a few chords, they go, "There's only 2 chords in there, man."
Yeah.
And I go, "That's not the point, man. Listen to the rhythm, what's happening, and listen. You have to play with the clave, inside the clave, and this, that, and the other." You know, and they're berating the music because to them it's not harmonically sophisticated enough.
Right.
So then you play some machito, and they go, "Oh, okay. You know, this is like, you know." So you try to find ways. To
Tito Puente's jazz albums.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just this big band stuff.
True.
His arrangements.
It was all in there.
Stuff.
Yeah.
But I think jazz musicians are their own worst enemies. It's funny because that's another irony. Jazz is the most open-minded music in terms of an art form. It's the only art form really that can take from other art forms and still retain its identity and integrity, which is the musician is a storyteller, as an improviser. But the musicians that play the music are the most musically biased, and I call them musical racists that I've ever met.
They definitely can be.
In any scene. Close second are classical musicians. But that's changing now with this new generation of classical musicians.
Sure.
And the new generation of jazz musicians.
I would agree.
So, and the fact that Berkeley, North Texas State, now they all have Latin jazz ensembles.
Sure. Cal State LA too.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of the drag about the people that are teaching them a lot of times that I find is they're very well intentioned, but they don't know enough about the history, and they're not imparting the history to the. See, you have to. This music is not just from a strictly technical standpoint. Do this, do that, and you'll be in there. You can do that in the beginning just to get somebody inside, but now you have to go deeper, which is okay. The culture that from whence this music comes from. Sure. What is the culture? What does it represent?
Sure.
Why is it? Why is this rhythm? Why Why is this song, even though it's using the same rhythm, why is this a cha-cha-cha and why is this a guajira? Even though the rhythm that the conga is playing and maybe the timbales and guiro are playing is the same. I go, he goes, well, man, it's different because cha-cha-chas are in major keys. They're anecdotal, humorous song forms. Guajira comes from the song tradition. It's a minor key. People don't know any of that stuff, or they don't impart it. So I see the look on people's faces sometimes when I call something, and I say, "No, you're playing wrong. you know, he goes, no, it's a cha-cha-cha. I go, no, you're playing the wrong bass line, man. You know, that, it's a different type of bass line for that type of music. So that's where we get into subtlety and nuance, which is the greatest form of artistic expression, subtlety and nuance. And all this music has that. The way the music is being taught, just the way jazz is taught. I remember Paul Kofun, one of my professors in arranging, he goes, you know the problem with this school at Berkeley? He stops the class because we're talking about blues, reharmonizing blues.
Sure.
And we're looking at a workbook. I think it was the Voicings Derived from Chord Skills book. He goes, shut the books. He goes, come around the piano. He goes, the problem with this school is it teaches a black art form in a white way.
Sure.
The blues is not about, you know, hitting the flat nine here. He goes, it's not about that, man. It's about the black experience. And he starts talking about that. And I go, wow, I had never seen or heard a teacher do that ever in my...
Sure.
It was deep, man.
Yeah.
He goes, this is the way, check that. Man, sometimes the blues in those days, in the early days, just 5 bars. Man. I go, what? 5 bars? We're all looking at each other and he's saying, because I'm not a singer, but check this out. This is from Lead Belly.
Yeah.
And he's doing it and I go, wow.
There was no rules to that stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. You know. So, I'm fortunate that I've had those aha moments in my life, and one of them was with Paul. But again, the difference is there isn't the scene, the vibrant club scene that there used to be.
Yeah.
To breed competition and to nurture, etc.
Sure. I guess what I want to add to that, if you don't mind me steering you in a particular direction, but you know, we are in a very interesting, at least in my opinion, in a very interesting point at the moment with things that have happened in recent years with, you know, like we were talking about, the erosion of a lot of that kind of those kind of opportunities. Yet we're kind of at an interesting crossroads in the sense that, you know, right now, especially in kind of the in the past like 15 years or so, like the Latin music scene, both Latin jazz and, you know, Latin folk music scene has expanded, you know, like with places like Terrassa 7 and stuff like that. Right. You know, there's you know, we got the point where like there's so many like South American cultures that have very strong identities in their music now, where those that didn't really happen before as much.
It did, but it did because there was an incredible cumbia scene here.
I did hear about that
in the 80s and 90s. I was part of it because I played with the best cumbia band in New York at the time. It was an Ecuadorian guy named Pablo Vela, and he had a band called Pablo Vela y sus Playboys.
Okay.
And what did Pablo look like? He looked like, if you ever seen Rocky and Bullwinkle, and what was this? What was the name of the Dudley Do-Right? His nemesis was Snidely Whiplash.
Okay.
That's what Pablo looked like.
Okay.
He looked like a hip version of Snidely Whiplash. And Pablo had in the band Steve Sachs, who was a tremendous alto player. He also played baritone sax in Tito Puente's band.
Okay.
He also had a great Brazilian jazz group called Guanabara.
Oh, really? Okay.
He was the musical director, and he got me into the band. He calls me up one day, Bobby, man, we need a timbala player for this cumbia band I play. You ever play cumbia band? Cumbia? I go, yeah, I know how to play it, but I've never played like in a steady band playing that. He goes, well, you're the perfect guy. We need him.
Yeah.
We need you, please. So, okay, great. So it was a guy named Dave Duval on trombone, Ron Quenherd on tenor. All these guys were playing with Machito, everybody, the baddest cats. This guy Toby was on piano. No, Marcus Silva, who went on to play with Airto, was the piano player.
Brazilian guy?
Yeah, I forgot who the bass player was. The conga player was Peruvian. And then Pablo and his two brothers, Freddie and Dario, were the front guys, and they do choreographed steps and do choros and everything. Man, it was a fun gig because you'd have these church dances, and it's like 500 people there, and they're all Colombians, Ecuadorians, Mexicans, Guatemalans, whatever, but mostly Colombians.
Right.
At the time, I was married to an Ecuadorian girl, so everybody knew me on the scene.
Oh, okay.
So then on the opposite end, the Brazilian scene was so heavy because there was an opening in the visas and a lot of Brazilians came over.
Sure.
So you had all these incredible bands. There was a band called Tiago de Mello in Amazon. It was a 6-horn, like a mini big band, Brazilian jazz group.
Mm-hmm.
Tiago taught was a soccer coach and he taught English at the UN.
Mm.
And he was a composer.
Right.
And his home base of operations was a place called Jazz Mania, a loft.
Okay.
So I got to sub in the band. The Duca del Fonseca was the drummer. He gets me to sub.
Yeah.
And I was playing with everybody, all the Brazilians, the Ecuadorians, the Colombians.
Yeah.
I was playing with Henry Threadgill in his band. I was doing all this stuff as a drummer and a percussionist.
Mm-hmm.
The loft, I mean, there was another loft called Black Beans that Damu Romao ran, and the percussionist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they would throw big concerts. SOBs had just opened up.
Yeah.
I mean, I was
Same
playing
location?
Huh?
Same location that it is now?
Same location, except it was half the size.
Oh, okay.
Eventually, what happened, they bought, or they tore the wall and got expanded on, made it bigger. Mm-hmm. But, man, there was so much Brazilian music happening in New York that SOBs could have Brazilian music 7 nights a week. Then what happened was immigration started cutting down and sending a lot of the people back. Mm-hmm. And then Larry started realizing, well, I can't have Brazilian music here every night. Larry Gold, the owner. So he called it SOBs and more. Or SOBs and beyond.
It's funny because it's become such a place for, like, you know, a lot of Cuban groups have played there.
Right.
A lot of when they come to, you know,
well, I saw the beginning of that because what happened was at that time, there was what we call salsa meets jazz at the Village Gate.
Okay.
Bleecker and Chelmsford Street with Arthur Lugo, which is now La Poisson Rouge.
Right.
So every Monday night, they'd have a salsa band, a Latin jazz group, and a guest jazz soloist, or 2 salsa bands and a guest jazz soloist. Mm-hmm. There weren't that many Latin jazz bands. It was mine. Ray Mantilla had one. Mongo Santa Maria had one. Mm-hmm. What else is there? There was nothing.
I guess, I never thought of that.
Except for a few, you know, Hector Martignon had local guys had groups.
Yeah, when did Hector get here? Like,
I don't remember, but he was always part of the scene since I remember. But
yeah.
But what happened was none of those groups had the name that Mongo or Ray Mantilla could have. Yeah. And then I eventually got in there.
Yeah.
Because I was making a name for myself, getting a reputation.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that one of the nights we played, it was my band, Ray Mantilla's band, and Roy Ayers was the guest soloist. And Jacko goes, well, you play vibes? I go, yeah, a little bit, but in college. But he goes, okay, you're going to play vibes against Roy Ayers. Because I go, you're going to have to rent a set. He goes, we'll rent them, you know. So I played vibes on some things. It was good.
Cool.
It was good.
Cool.
But Roy Ayers had this electronic vibes thing. He could sound like Jimi Hendrix if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was fun. So that was happening. There was a club across the street from the Village Gate called Mondo Perso.
Okay.
And they had Latin jazz there on Mondays, but they had jazz there during the rest of the week. Joe Racasano, the alto player who used to play with Don Ellis, he ran the programming there, the musical programming. Mm. And what happened was when things would end at the Village Gate, a lot of people would go over there. They'd stay open later.
Yeah.
Then there was another place called trying to remember, right on the corner of where the Blue Note was. That had Visiones. Mm. Visiones. I played there a lot. Mm. In fact, one night we were booked there, and then Mario calls me up. Hey, Mario Balzar was playing with Mario Balzar's Afro-Cuban jazz. He goes, we got a gig next week. Just came out of the. I go, but Mario, I got another gig. Well, what are you gonna do? I go, don't worry, I'll work it out. So I had 2 drum sets. I was a Pearl endorser at the time. I had SIR deliver a drum set to the Village Gate. Okay. I had my drum set at Visiones. I played with Visiones, run over to the Village Gate, because we were the second group on. I forgot who opened up for us. I go back and forth. And people were following me. I remember that night. Where are you going? I go, I'm going to Visiones. I got to play there. Oh, shit, great. We'll go over there too. Because it was cheap enough that you could do that.
Yeah.
It was a funny night, man. I remember.
That's
the lady from Visiones was pissed off, the owner.
Why?
Because what happened when we finished our set, all of a sudden people would go, "Where you go?" They knew I was playing with Mario,
Oh,
and
I
they
see.
leave. And
They left with you. Yeah.
They follow us
Yeah, I can see
because she
that.
wanted them to stay and have tapas and all
Right.
that.
Yeah. All that kind of stuff.
But anyway, it was, man, what a scene, man! What a great scene. It was. I mean, all this shit was happening. So in a sense, what has changed is that you have this cadre of musicians that have learned how to play this music on an academic level.
Sure.
In the college, on the College of Berkeley,
Right.
Manhattan School of Music, where I teach, New School, where I teach, NYU, Juilliard, William Patterson College.
Yep.
Whether they're from Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, it doesn't matter. They're coming here to learn how to play jazz, right? And they bring their culture with them.
Yep.
But these musicians are young, so they don't know everything about their culture. You know, they're still learning their own culture.
Yeah.
So you have that happening.
Yep.
But there's no really outlet for them other than terraza and the occasional gig in a small club, etc.
There used to be Tatuma, which was a Peruvian place.
Right. There used to be another place called, starts with an S. Santa. It's like it has a Middle Eastern name.
I don't know.
There was a few places.
Yeah.
But back when I was coming up, man, you know,
Yeah.
you could see Guillermo DeFranco, who I played with Weather Report also. He's playing at a little place called Green Street. And Janice Siegel is singing with him from Manhattan Transfer because they have an off night.
Yeah.
So, what's the other place? They have Rumbas on Thursdays. Used to be on Houston Street. Name will come to me in a second. It's not the Knitting Factory.
That was Zinc?
Zinc Bar, yeah.
Yeah.
The Zinc Bar is a carryover, is a leftover from that time period.
Yeah, they used to have a lot of different things.
I mean, I've been at the Zinc Bar in the original place. It was so tiny, and Ruben Blades is there, watching what's going on.
Yeah, still a place where people hang out. I mean,
John played there a lot. John Benitez.
Right.
I mean,
they still have the Roombas. They have a lot of Brazilian groups.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not. Excuse me. It's not the same. So you have this this weird mix of academically trained young musicians, but no place really for outlets for them to be nurtured by older musicians like myself. Because you have to see. I don't care what anybody says. If you're a young musician, you cannot learn from people your own age. You can't, because they're in the same freaking boat as you.
Exactly.
They're just getting it together. They might have a million chops, know how to play on giant steps on all the keys, but it takes an older musician on the bandstand to go to you, yo, slow down, man. You're talking a lot and you're not saying jack shit. Why don't you, do this or whatever, and giving you pointers, etc.
Yeah.
The best ensembles have always been combinations of youth and experience.
Yeah.
And that's not happening. I mean, to a certain extent, I'm like really the only band leader that has the opportunity to do that, because if you look at my big band, which is 19 musicians,
I was just about to ask you about the big band.
Eight of them are former students of mine.
Well, yeah.
And some of them, others haven't been, but I've mentored. Like the percussionists that I use now, they weren't students of mine, but I've mentored them. So, and whenever I need a sub in the band, I usually I'll get a current student to give them a shot, to give them some experience.
Yeah.
Of course, the older guys in the band sometimes say things like, "Don't do that, man." Get somebody. Okay, get me. If you want to get somebody to, because that usually happens with the lead players. Like they'll say something because and they're right. They're right most of the time, because sometimes it's a different thing when you're playing with some cats that are older and don't really know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, and that's not the easiest book in the world. I can speak from personal experience.
Right.
Right.
Right. So it's just the first hurdle is the technical aspect of it, and then getting inside the music, etc. So
yeah.
So I mean, you've done fabulous with so you're one of those guys that I can call upon, and I don't have to worry about, oh man, does this guy really know the difference between a plena and a bomba? And then there's different types of bombas and things like that.
Of course. That was all thanks to Darwin, believe it or not.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was
Well,
because I met Darwin in Chicago.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
there for 2 days, and he asked if I played. We played a jazz set together. He asked if I played Latin jazz and salsa, and I lied.
Right,
And
right.
that's how it all came to be.
Well,
Yeah,
sometimes you have to do that
yeah, yeah,
so you can learn, man.
yeah.
You
No,
know,
but
but those opportunities are few and far between now.
yeah,
I
and he
see
had
that
a
in
big band.
I see
He had a
that
big
in the
band.
drummers.
Yeah,
They see a lot of great young drummers with a lot of great technical, and I know who they studied with, and I know some of the things that I know he learned that from Gary Chaffee's book or whatever,
right.
or whatever. But they don't really know the, the nuances, and once in a while, you know, I used to come up to guys, hey, you know what? Let me show you something because I don't do it much anymore because uh, my philosophy is if you want it, ask the elders. Like, well, I wanted it, so I'd go to a certain person. I go, hey, sir, can you show me what you did with the snare drum? You know, like,
Sure.
he goes, what are you talking about? On that 1, 2, and he goes, and they'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. And then they walk away. And now in the beginning, I'd say, man, what an asshole. But then I started realizing it's just a test to see if I really want to learn. So
Sure.
then I come back and ask again. And then they go, you really want to learn, don't you? You know?
Yeah.
He goes, okay, I'll show you. And then they go, I'll show you one time.
Okay.
And then they go, show you. Could you do it again? I should have been paying attention, man. I told you one time. Now that might seem harsh in this PC world of today.
Sure, sure.
But that's really a tradition. Goes all the way back to Africa.
Yeah.
You know, so if you really want it, pay attention.
Yeah.
Ask. Be respectful of the elders. Listen, there's guys that I remember coming up on the scene because I had all this knowledge from Berkeley, you know, technical knowledge, that I could play chop wedge rings around it, like Kako. If I, you know, I could do things that Kako could never do. But I respected Kako, and the way he played the bell, the way he soloed. I mean, wow, man, it's funky the way he. I mean, there's something there that I wish I could get. And I'm gonna have to really study hard.
Yeah.
Check out more of his recordings. Watch him, follow him, shadow him.
Sure.
You know, maybe if I get balls enough to ask him to show me something.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so young people have to realize that. I mean, you might like Jocko, and Stanley Clark and everything, but if it wasn't for Milt Hinton, you know, and the guys that came before, Jimmy Blanton, who could never play like what Jocko does,
right?
Because they didn't have that, they didn't grow up with those influences. But Jocko certainly listened to them.
Yeah. Well, his main influences were Jerry Jamont and like the guys on the radio like Tom Cogbill and people that played on all the the R&B recordings at the time.
Exactly. But it's his talent that you know, and his creativity that took him to another level. But that bass is what gave it the foundation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So. And you have any other questions?
I guess the only thing I want to before I let you go is yeah, I mean, you've answered a little bit of it, kind of how you feel now as an educator and watching these musicians kind of go through the system and out the other end.
It's hard. I mean, 20 years ago I could tell a parent, don't worry, Mrs. Sontag, your son, daughter, they're musically qualified. They'll make a living at this. I can't do that anymore. But another thing that concerns me that I find with young musicians today is two things. They're victims of AI, what I call AI, and that's not artificial intelligence. It's arrogance and ignorance. And
it's really that noticeable?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I noticed it's not with everybody.
Sure.
You got shining examples of somebody shining example of somebody that isn't like that is Christian Sands, the pianist. He was my student at Manhattan School of Music. When the first day in class, I told him, "Young man, I'd like to meet your parents." He goes, "Why?" He goes, "Because I want to shake their hand and commend them for raising such a respectful, intelligent and artistically inclined young man." Then I started asking him more, and who were your teachers? He goes, oh, Dr. Billy Taylor was his mentor since he was young. So he learned about the majesty of the music, respecting the elders, and how to treat the music in an elegant manner, and also conduct himself in an elegant manner. So, but yeah, arrogance and ignorance a lot of times I see. Not everybody, but I see it in the classroom, and I do my best to correct it. And some of those musicians that have been like that work now in my big band. I'm serious.
Okay.
Like things like
I
I okay, I told you to wear a tux with a white bow tie. Why are you coming with a black shirt and a black bow tie, man? Right. Well, I don't have a black. I go. Yeah, but I told you a month ago to get it together. That kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah. I made the mistake of wearing the wrong color tie once. I remember. Well, and you had the spare ones.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, but in your case, it wasn't a thing. An intentional.
I actually misread an email. Yeah. Dyslexia.
But or musicians, they come with an attitude because they don't like the particular chart on music. I go,
right.
Yours is not the reason why. Yours is but to do or die. This is a service industry. You are there to service the music.
Sure.
And I've heard things sometimes in the trumpet section. This guy doesn't know how to write for trumpets. Look at this unison here. And I go, you haven't heard the chart yet, have you? He goes, well, we haven't rehearsed it yet. I go, wait till we rehearse. And then they hear all this beautiful harmony contrasting with the saxophones and going, and I turn around, and they look at me like with that look of like, oh
right.
Yeah. I start laughing. I go, well, so much for that. We got over that. I think what young musicians have to be is, I think my advice to them is always seek out the counsel of the elders as much as humanly possible, and go out and check out the elders. Also, I'm 60 years old, man. I still feel like I'm 20, but I'm, I guess I'm an elder now. But it's a funny position that I find myself in now, because I never thought I would be in this position. I'm getting a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Jazz Education Network.
Really?
For my educational activities in Latin jazz.
Cool.
So in the next convention in Dallas. But I never thought I'd be doing this. Like my thing was like, I wanted to be the best sideman I possibly can be, and lead a group to get my musical vision across. But the educational thing, it just happened. Like I told you, it just happened when somebody knocking on my door at Berkeley. You the guy with the Latin records? Hey, can you lend me some of them? And I go, I can't lend them to you, but if you want to come in, I'll play some of them for you, and I'll try to explain what's going on.
Yeah, I love that part of the story. When you start talking about that, it's just like, wow, that early on, that's something else.
Yeah, and it was because, and people don't realize, teaching is an expression of love, because basically you're sharing. And I just love doing it. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. Sometimes people say, oh, you're too crazy sometimes in the classroom when you get on people's cases. And I go, well, I want them to feel as passionate about this as I do.
Yeah.
And
Ray Vega was good at that too.
Yeah. And it's like, you have to realize that people died for this music. People suffered. And there's so many great Latin musicians that died in obscurity. For example, a guy like Rene Hernandez, the pianist from Machito, he's the guy that wrote the charts for Eddie Palmieri on the Son of Latin Music album, besides Barry Rogers. But Un Puesto Vacante, not Un Puesto Vacante, Nada de Ti, and all those tunes, he wrote the charts. And he was dying of cancer. And Eddie's like telling him, Rene, you can't die. He's got to finish these charts, I mean...
Yeah.
Now that guy is a guy that should be studied by every pianist that says, "Oh, I play Latin jazz, Afro-Cuban jazz specifically."
Sure.
But do they know who he is? I mean, do they know who? If I told a young pianist today, "Hey, you know who Lili Martinez is, right?" And they would go, "No, I'm into Chucho Valdez and Michel Camilo." I go, man, those guys wouldn't exist without Lili. Lili was the first piano player with Arsenio Rodriguez. He's the first guy to play a montuno on the freaking piano, man.
Yeah.
And you don't know that? So that's where I get into this thing of ignorance. That's the ignorant part. You know, so I think that young people playing the music, they really have to do the deep dive and dig. Just like you do the deep dive and you dig with jazz.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a lot, and it's all documented. It's all there. The recordings are there.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask people, if you don't know who to, just start looking.
Yeah.
And asking. You might bump into me. Ask me anything you want, and
Yeah.
if I have the answer, I'll give it to you. And if I don't have the answer, I'll tell you where you can find the answer, because I'd like to know the answer too myself. I'm always learning, and it's a big responsibility what we do, because on a superficial level, our job is simple. We just are there to make people happy. The next level is to inspire them. Inspire them, and you could, and believe it or not, you can do it. The Beatles did it. You know, the Rolling Stones have done it. Coltrane has done it. Puente has done it. Just by the very act that you're performing and making somebody feel good is inspirational. And the next thing, besides developing your identity and your voice, is hopefully you pass it on to the next generation, so that they can take the mantle or the ball or the torch or whatever metaphor you want to use, and they could run with it and pass it on. Because if you don't, then what happens is you get people that come up to you and say, "Hey, Mr. Sanabria, check this out. I just wrote something in 17 over 4." I go, "That's cool." He goes, "Nobody's done this before." I go, "You never heard of Don Ellis?"
Right.
And I go, "Who's Don Ellis?" I go, "Do your homework. Go back."
Yeah.
Go back. Because then what happens is you become a parody of yourself. And that's what happens with the music. We kind of, and that's what's happening now in pop music. We're kind of in a weird situation in popular music.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're talking to the wrong guy. I'm blissfully ignorant of this.
Yeah.
Of that kind of stuff.
But the other day I was having a conversation with David Gonzalez, who's we went to high school together. We were on the track team.
Okay.
He's a great journalist. He went on to become award-winning reporter for the New York Times. So he's into music though, because his son is studying music, and he plays for me some Kool and the Gang stuff, Jungle Boogie from back in the day. I go, "Oh man, I'm listening to this." I go, Dave, I'm sorry, but the music that me and you grew up on, that was the unequivocal shit, man. I mean, it's like, just listen, all the stuff, Weather Report, Tower of Power, you could just go down, Mandrill. I mean, well, even the disco stuff, like like Casey and the Sunshine.
Yeah. I wish that was the worst stuff on the radio right now.
Exactly. And it's like, it's like the youth, the people today don't know shit, man. It's like they don't know what's happening, man. I mean,
from a popular standpoint.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
So, I would encourage everybody listening to this, get into the history, because besides inspiring you, it'll blow your mind and curve your spine, man. You'll start going, wow. It's like when Michael Jackson came out with the moonwalk, and older tap dancers started going, man, Bilbo Jangles Robinson did that. And there's film of it too, So years ago, it's not new. It's just reinvented.
Right.
So if you study history, it'll inspire you and it'll take you to places that you've never been to before. And that's what I'm trying to do with my big band, with the quartet, with Ascension, and when I teach both individually and in a classroom situation. Trying to take you where you've never gone before, but from a place from a place of history. That's basically it.
Great. Man, beautiful interview, man. Like,
thanks.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Anytime we could do a part 2. We could talk. We could talk. There's so much to talk about.
I know. I totally agree.
But that love scene, wow, man.
Yeah.
That was when I meet some of my colleagues, like the Duca de Fonseca
Mm-hmm.
or Joe Locke or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
we start talking, or Steve Sachs,
Mm-hmm.
or anybody, Eddie Montalvo,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, just the salsa scene back then and the jazz scene. We look at each other, we go, God damn, we're lucky, man. We lived through that.
Mm-hmm.
I go, it's like I remember, and I'll close off with this, talking to my father about the Palladium Ballroom,
Mm-hmm.
and he's talking about it with reverence and majesty, and with a glint in his eye, almost a tear.
Yeah, yeah.
And he goes, "Pop, man, He goes, "I'm sorry, man. You'll never experience that.
Right.
He goes, you're experiencing other things, but at least for me, that was something that was so important, and to your mother and to
Right.
all of us at that time, um, that it's something that still inspire, like warms his heart.
Mm-hmm.
So these memories that I gave you of what what I've been through, like buying Joe Batan's Ride album,
Yeah.
it just warms my heart. I mean, is Latin Boogaloo, the most sophisticated music out there? No. It's party music, man. That's all it is. It's just for party. That's all it is. Does it make me happy when I hear it? Of course it does. If a jazz musician comes by and says, "Hey, what is that crap, man?" And says, I go, "Man, you got a hole in your soul. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
I don't want to even deal with you." I want to deal with cats that when they hear something like that, they go, "Wow, man, that's cool.
Oh.
What is that?"
Yeah.
And then if that's my main criteria when I hire a musician, for any of my groups. And if I see that they're not if I see that they have some kind of negative vibe about it, that's it. I won't even, I can't use you. I just, if they ask me later on hey, how come you never call me? I go, "Man, because you made some wisecrack about a particular chart."
Oh,
and that's,
wow.
that's disrespectful to the arranger.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And everything. And it meant that you weren't giving me your all playing the music. Because that's another important thing.
Yeah.
If I hire you, don't come up to me telling me, "Hey, listen, I'm sick tonight. Don't give me any solos." I go, "Well, what do you mean?" I goes, "Well, I'm just like 75% there." "Okay, well, I'm just going to give you 75% of the money." "What?" It goes, "Yeah, but you're telling me I'm hiring you to give me 100%. You're giving me 75.
Yeah.
That's that old school thing.
Yeah.
That's that old school thing. If I show up to the gig and I'm sick, I'm not going to say shit. I'll just give you my all and everything, and I'm going to suffer the consequences afterwards, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've done recording sessions with a fever, 101 fever.
Me too.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So that's why I call you. When I call you, I mean, because I can depend on you. But man, some kids today coming into class.
I definitely don't have the audacity to say something like that. I don't know if I. that's just
no. But you'd be surprised. Like you'll see it in the classroom.
Yeah.
Kids that are not they're not there.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they'll whip out a cell phone right in the middle of you lecturing, and I go, "What are you doing, man?"
Sure. Yeah.
Or the worst is they get up in the middle of class, right when you're rehearsing a tune. They get up, they walk out because they want to make a phone call. They say they're going to the bathroom. I had to get rid of 3 kids out of the Manhattan School of Music band this semester because of that.
Wow. Okay.
And one kid, I had to get rid of him 2 days before a concert, the lead alto player.
Wow.
Because he said he didn't like the music. I go, because I asked him, "Why you always got an attitude in this?" He goes, "Well, is it what you don't? It can't be the music." He goes, "Well, I don't really like the music." I go, "Well, you don't like the music?" I go, "Okay, don't worry about this. I got somebody else that day. Send them the music. Another student. He killed it. He killed it. It was a big concert at Aaron Davis. So he killed it. He literally, the vibe, everybody in the saxophone, the whole band lit up, everything."
Yeah.
And I said,
that stuff can make such a huge difference.
Yeah. And I told them, "You see, gentlemen, 2 things you learned today. Being into and loving your profession makes a big difference, and also anybody can be replaced at any time." So I deal with that directly in the classroom. It's not just me. Anybody that teaches on the college level, even the high school level,
sure,
deals with that kind of stuff.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So what I say is, those kind of musicians, those kind of young people that are supposedly studying the music to be in this profession, get another job, man. You don't deserve to be in this because we're so lucky to do what we do. You know what it is to pick up a musical instrument and get paid to basically entertain somebody, make them happy. So anybody listening to this who's young, hopefully you'll take those words to heart. And we got to end now because I got to go to a gig.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you again for taking the time to listen to the People of Earth podcast. And on behalf of the People of Earth podcast, I want to thank Bobby Sanabria for taking the time to talk to us out of his busy schedule. Again, you can find more information on his upcoming album, West Side Story Reimagined, on his website, bobbysanabria.com. Also, I hope to see all of you at the next People of Earth performance on February 6th at 8 p.m. at Brooklyn Bowl. Of course, for all other information on myself and People of Earth, you can visit peopleofearthmusic.com as well as my personal website, ianstewartbass.com. Thank you as always for listening, and see you next week.